it's literally life moving. And for instance, I work with a lot of men, and they've been even more deeply raised that their turn on is shameful and dangerous and wrong. When actually, and I'm not saying that there are not a lot of cases where men's sexuality is it hasn't been dangerous, but the base of the male turn on is so beautiful. It's so sacred. It's literally God saying, I want to penetrate you, open to yourself. Right. And so to also help men see that their desires and their longings are literally God moving through them, saying, I want to open you up to life. I want to open you up to God. And to start reframing it like that, to see our desires as literally wanting to come to union, to experience something much greater than ourselves. Right. And so, and I don't think for that you need to have light spiritual sex. Right. Also, on that, we incorporate the darkness.
Hey everyone, my name is Sarah Tillamont and welcome to Her Ascension Story, the podcast that proves the world is transformed by every hero's personal adventure. Here we talk about the real and the raw things that make up life and what it really is. It's the authentic things that should be talked about more, and I'm talking people's stories from around the world that we can all see ourselves reflected in. Yoga, sex, consciousness, healing, the hard parts about life, and so much more. My hope is that you get inspired here to go deeper on your personal path. And if you like this stuff and you want to go deeper together, be sure to check me out on Instagram at Her Ascension Story, or head to my website, herascensionstory.com, to book a session. Thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone. Today with us is Sophie Josephina. She is an amazing traditional Tantra teacher, embodying divine feminine, divine masculine. But she has a unique story because she's actually a former data scientist. She walks the bridge and embodies the bridge between Tantra and neuroscience, masculine, feminine, dark, and light. And she leads potent programs for both men through the initiation and women healing the masculine. Thank you so much, Sophie, for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that beautiful introduction.
So I obviously love the traditional Tantra, not necessarily the Neo-Tantra that you really share with people, especially on social media, which I love your platform. It's so amazing. You really dive into truly accepting and owning and helping others embrace the shadow, which I think is just amazing, amazing work, because so many people are focused on the light right now. But at the same time, you really do focus on healing the divine feminine and the divine masculine within all of us, the wounding, the inner child, the inner raunchy parts of us that need this love and this attention and no shame and no embarrassment. And it's really just such a healing platform. But like I said in your intro, you obviously haven't always been this person, and you were a former data scientist. So just leading all the way from childhood up to now, what is your story? How did you get to be where you are now?
So beautiful. Yeah. So I was raised by a tantrika and by a quantum physicist. So I had an upbringing of what would seem like two very different worlds, but to me they weren't. So where a lot of people think like, oh, like spirituality might not have anything to do with science or with matter or with any of that. For me, that actually was almost the same thing, just a different languaging. It also means that for me, Tantra was real life. It wasn't this like when I go to a Tantra workshop and I learn how to, I don't know, breathe my energy up my spine, and then all of a sudden I'm tantric. That wasn't how I was brought to it. I really came from a deeply classical tantric background, which really, it wasn't even as much about the erotic aspect. It was so much more about actually fully allowing life as it is. And so exactly what you say, like the shadow or like jealousy or like anger or depression or burnout, whatever it is, all of that to actually be there, to actually say yes to whatever is alive in you, and not this like mindfulness thing of what people do, that they kind of detach from, I'm not my anger, I'm not my anger. The tantra I was raised with pretty much said, at least feel the anger, digest it, experience it, because that's what your body is here for. that's why you're on this earth. You're here to feel these things. So that was a bit of my upbringing, was very much two sides. And I initially went way more into the corporate scientific direction. And I studied really hard, worked really hard. And by the age of 25, I was a really like at the top of my career, I think, in data science in a very large corporate company with a very male dominated environment. And it wasn't per se toxic at all. And my body collapsed fully, completely. I didn't get out of bed, I think, for 2 years. My body would make new diseases and new illnesses and became more and more creative. That by the end of it, I had an epileptic attack every 48 hours because my body did not want to go back to that office. And again, let me stress, like, I wasn't in a terrible place. I didn't hate my job. It didn't spark joy as much, but I also didn't hate it. And so it didn't make sense to me how badly my body didn't want to be in the life that I was living. And now I'm grateful, but it was relentless. And I had to go back to where my true yes was, to where my fuck yes was. I really had to, I was forced to start listening to that. And so in my burnout, I came back to Tantra, but then Tantra on like a Thai island with tantric workshops and totally different than I had learned about as a child. And I rediscovered those roots, and I rediscovered masculine and feminine. And I also felt, also where I think neo tantra or the spiritual community wasn't completely matching with me. I have a very big crusade against spiritual bypassing and stuff like that. And I saw so much bypassing everywhere I went. And I thought, this is not the kind of spaces I want to be in. This is also not the way I want to teach. And I think by that really propelled me very quickly into, okay, so what is my truth then? How do I see all of these things? How do I want to work with these? What's the real life version of this, we can teach everybody all these beautiful spiritual concepts, but if it doesn't work on the day that you're overwhelmed because you have to do groceries and the dishes, those are the moments. So that's really how I've gone into teaching. And right now I am what shall I call myself? I'm a relating and intimacy coach for both men and women. And I work a lot with masculine, feminine, and polarity. I work with sexuality in the sense that I think sexuality is an amazing healing tool. It's an amazing energetic to use throughout the day. Again, for me, sexuality and eros is not something that happens in one category. It's an energetic that's there throughout the day, that is there when I'm angry, that's there when I'm sad, that is there when I'm doing the dishes. It's there. And so I see it much more integrated, I think, than maybe some other people are expressing tantric or neo tantra. So I'm much more, I think I sometimes say I'm much more boring in that sense, because it's much more integrated, I think, and just real life. And I love the dark. I love the shadow. I've had a really rough life. And so I think I'm only where I am now because I had to face all those things, and I have faced all of those things. And, I am not working from the assumption that there's anything wrong with me. So this is what I love about Tantra. This is one of my favorite parts about Tantra. There's nothing wrong with me when I'm angry or jealous, or if I have an anxious attachment style. There's nothing wrong with me. It's more about how can I create the life that helps my nervous system, my blueprint, my energetic system thrive. And in that, for me, my what's it called? My materialism, my luxury has become my spiritual practice. Right. And so many other things have become my spiritual practice that aren't officially part of that, according to some people. But for me, it is, because it's part of how can I live this one life the fullest? How can I live at the fullest with exactly the energetic and nervous system that I have? How can I live at the fullest? And so, yeah, I'm telling you so many things in such a short amount of time.
Oh no, I love it all so much. And there are so many things that I want to touch base. I'm like jotting down notes as we go. But if we can backtrack just a little bit to how,
Mhm.
I mean, you introduced, this information that's in our body when you mentioned when you're angry, but at the same time with your job. And I think that the body is so much wiser than a lot of us give credit for. And
Yes.
our body is continuously trying to guide us. And I know that I experienced it myself with traumatic brain injuries, and the neuroscientist that I had to work with was just like, some people are just more prone to hitting their head than others. And I was like, that's, come on now, like that cannot be the thing. Like, why? What is the reason behind that? And so these were like my wake up calls, and they kept happening as I didn't wake up to just the realization, not necessarily like spiritual awakening, just whatever my body was trying to tell me. So in your work, how did you actually cope during those 2 years with consistent dis-ease and your body's creativity to try to send you information?
I actually, I was quite deep in the spiritual community at that point, and I initially thought that all my sickness and my illness was trauma that wasn't integrated. So I went very deep into therapies and all these things. But again, the underlying energetic was that there was something wrong with me and it had to be fixed. I lost my mother not long before that, and it was quite short actually before that, and she said, as she was terminally ill, she said, "I'm not sick. My body is wise." And she had like terminal lung cancer, and like anybody would think like you're ill. She's like, "No, I'm actually not sick. My body is wise." And everybody said, "Oh yeah, it's so interesting that we think illness or misattunement in the body is a sign of misalignment or a sign of something isn't integrated." I won't say that I'm completely healthy now. I'm still not. However, I honor my body. And so what I was doing in that period, I think I was very much thinking it needed to be fixed, it needed to be fixed, it needed to be fixed, right? And I was putting so much energy in it needing to be fixed, it needed to be fixed. The day I stopped trying to fix my illnesses and truly letting them be and saying, okay, this is it. I have a very rare gut disease, and at some point they will need to remove my gut. This is it. This is the body I have. And how can I now make the best out of my life? Can I be sick and thrive? Yes. Can I be sick and have a relationship? Of course. Can I be sick and have a career and run a business? Yes, I can do all of those things. I can do all of those things. I'm still not recovered from my burnout, and I run a gigantic business now. You can do all of it. So it's really, the sickness is just one part of it. And I really learned to release of actually all the underlying meanings that we give it, and that we sometimes do when we go into the healing like the healing modalities. Really be careful if you're not going into it with the energy of something is wrong with me and it needs to get fixed. Like right now, what I do have to say is that there were times where my body gave very clear signals that something was wrong, and the doctor said nothing was wrong. Right. And I honored that fierce as fuck. I said, something's up and I will not leave this hospital until somebody takes a scan. And people thought I was emotional. People thought I was crazy. People thought all these things about me. But I really started honoring. I thought, I am in a female body. This is made to bring life to earth. This is made to hold really intense physical sensations, right? My body is made to, and my body is actually very good at telling me when something's wrong, because that's what it's made to do, right? It's made to tell me like, this is just a gigantic pain of bringing a baby onto this earth, and this is something there's wrong. It's wrong. Something's wrong here. So I've always honored that actually also in that period. And, looking back at it, I wish I had given myself the respect almost and the honoring of what my body was telling me, of what my body was asking from me, right? Like I had fibromyalgia for 2 years. I could barely lift an arm. And instead of thinking like, oh my God, I'm 23 years old and I can't move my body, thinking, okay, apparently my body wants to lay down. So clear. It's literally forcing me to do it. Okay, body. Okay, I'm listening now. You want me to lay down? I lay down. Now, when I have these epileptic attacks, I think, okay, great. apparently the computer needs to be reset. We're going to lay down, let this happen. I trust that you've got me. And that's really, I think, the shift that happens. I fully trust that my body's got me. My body's not out there to screw me over or to be a burden. It's really, it's got me. And now I'm actually so grateful. And I work with a really nice NLP master. And he brought this beautiful insight to me. He said, you're somebody who has lots of clarity spiritually, lots of clarity mentally and emotionally. And your body's the place where everything gets worked through. And I was like, wow, I'm so grateful that that's where it is. Because if it would be on the other things, I think it would really bother me. But my body, that's cool. Thank you, body. Thank you for being the place where things get to be digested and that everything else is so clear. I'm so grateful for that. Yeah.
I love that so much. Yes, yes, yes. Because I mean, we hear it all the time, the cliche sayings like, you're a soul and you have a human body. Like, why can't we say, like, own our bodies more? Why are we trying to disconnect ourselves with our bodies with every single thing, that thought even alone, and every single thing that we experience is through our bodies, because of our bodies. Yeah. So where does your
can I just add on to that? Like, I think that everything is the universe experiencing itself. And so my body is me experiencing myself. And so it's always working both ways. And so I also don't think I'm 100% responsible for everything my body does. Like, I was born with a gut that doesn't work. Okay, great. That might just be bad luck. It's creating certain things inside me because I am myself experiencing myself. And so it always works kind of in both directions. It's not that I'm a complete master of my body. And it's also not that my body's a complete master of me. We are constantly experiencing ourselves. And that's also the same with our body. And so I don't think they are split entities. They're not. It's part of an ecosystem that's experiencing itself. Yeah, sorry, what did you want to ask?
No, that's beautiful. That's strong. That is strong. And I think so many more people need to actually try to understand that on so many different levels. So where does this sacred sexuality come into play through this body connection and spiritual and just like this beautiful micro and macrocosm that we are?
Sexuality is everywhere. I was trained in tantric sexuality a few years ago, and what we learned there is that, like, sexuality is everywhere. Babies in utero masturbate, right? It never leaves us, because sexuality is almost the creative force of life running through us. And when I'm creating something for my business, it's sexual energy. When I am taking care of my plants, there's a sexual energy there, because I'm in a creation energy. I'm in an experiencing energy. If you've gone to tantric workshops, you might have experienced energetic orgasms or something like that, right? Like, it has so little to do with the pressing the buttons of type of sexuality that we've been taught. Like, if you just press these buttons, then somebody's going to have an orgasm. And it's about so much more. For me, sexuality is also, I was raised by two people who very much, like, they were also Dutch, and we have a slightly different culture around sexuality, but there was no taboo. So I've never been raised with that it wasn't like we couldn't discuss anything. It was all very open. I remember my mom taking me to get the pill when I was 13, thinking, she was like, you're already very sexual. We're going to go get you the pill. So it was always just a very normal topic. So I was also not raised with the same, I think, suppression that a lot of people have. And that meant that I went into the world with a certain innocence around my sexuality. And I've really, especially in my 20s, had a really difficult time being a naturally sexual person in a place where, with slut shaming and sisterhood wounds and all of this, and people being intrigued by it, me also being very much not safe, because my sexual energy was so open. So I had a lot of men harassing me and stalking me and this kind of stuff. So I had quite a process bringing my almost innocent sexuality into the world. And that is something that now I'm in my 30s that feels much more integrated, that my sexuality is really here for me. And I choose when I switch it on or off, right? I think some women is first, but yeah, especially women, actually female bodies that have a quite strong sexual energetic sometimes struggle to switch it off, right? And I know that I would like be harassed in the train because I just could not switch off that energetic. It was so much oozing out of my body. I can switch it off now because I'm also decoupled the value I have given myself over the years for being a sexual woman, right? I also thought I was sexy. And so that gave me value. And now as I've matured a little bit, that is not as important. So I know when to switch the energy on or off. And I think it's always there in the sense that it's it's literally life moving. It's literally life moving. And for instance, I work with a lot of men, and they've been even more deeply raised that their turn on is shameful and dangerous and wrong. When actually, and I'm not saying that there are not a lot of cases where men's sexuality is it hasn't been dangerous, but the base of the male turn on is so beautiful. It's so sacred. It's literally God saying, I want to penetrate you, open to yourself. Right. And so to also help men see that their desires and their longings are literally God moving through them, saying, I want to open you up to life. I want to open you up to God. And to start reframing it like that, to see our desires as literally wanting to come to union, to experience something much greater than ourselves, right? And so, and I don't think for that you need to have light spiritual sex, right? Also in that, we incorporate the darkness also in that. And the last part on this is that for me, sacred sexuality, you know, I think especially in a female body, because so much of her body is actually deeply orgasmic, things like squirting even, or different types of orgasms, or cervical stimulation, are emotional tools. We think squirting is like a porn trick. It's not. It's actually a deeply traumatic release. And when we start training everybody and bringing that perspective of like, okay, when you want to experience that yourself, or you want to give that experience to your lover, know what you're actually doing, right? Because you're literally letting the deepest of the pelvic floor muscles vibrate in a way that she has no control over. You're letting fluid come out of her body that doesn't automatically come, right? It's the deepest physical surrender. It is a trauma release. It's an emotional release. It is deeply emotional and sacred and tender. And to start honoring sexuality is that. For me, sexuality isn't so pleasure-based. I think for a lot of people, it's just like, oh, you should have more pleasure, more pleasure. For me, sexuality is honestly where I cry, where I get angry, where I move through my traumas. This is really where I actually express the bigness of my emotional, so my darker emotions. And so I sometimes like struggle almost like when I see on Instagram how everybody talks about sexuality and pleasure. I'm like, it's not what my lived experience per se is, because I'm not in this constant search for pleasure. I'm in a search for opening, which to me isn't always pleasure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, there are so many things there. So first, this innocent sexual energy, obviously there are obstacles to come back to that space within you, through learning how to switch on and off your sexual energy. And so that innocent sexuality, and I also want to talk about like the ability as a woman to switch it on and off, not even just sexual energy, but just actually expressing ourselves and letting our energy actually radiate from us and out into the world. If you can expand on that more.
Yeah, I work with a lot of, so I have a course for women called Healing the Masculine, and it's mostly like the strong, independent woman that's actually been in a masculine energetic for so long, and in that way it's actually very closed off energetically. And so I teach them to actually go into the world and literally feel that you can open yourself up, and you can just walk down the street and you'll notice that everybody will start talking to you. And it's not that you're dressed different or look different or have a different body. It's just literally a switch that you can switch on and off. You can play with it. It's, for me, the switched on energetic is literally saying, I'm here, come play with me almost, or like I'm here, engage with me. I want to, I'm open to be engaged with, and other people might call that flirtatious or whatever, but I don't have to do anything what we call flirting. I can literally just walk outside with a sense of openness, with a sense of, hey, I'm here and I see you, and there is a way to get to come closer to me, and there's a way to engage with me. And so often a lot of women have actually, because they've been so stuck in a masculine energetic, have closed off a lot of that energy. When I was younger, I also had what you just said, like that energy was too open. And for me, that confusion came from, I think, being taught by society that you need to be a sexy girl, but then as you are sexual, then you get to be shamed, and just really being very confused about where I was supposed to be to do it the right way. And this is why also I said, like, that's where I also very much got my value from. I got my value from that people thought I was attractive or sexy or whatever it was. I very much got my value from that. And I realized that I was also attracting a lot of men that looked up to me. So I work with the wounded archetypes. One of the wounded archetypes is the seductress. And she uses her sexuality as a power tool, right? And as long as she's the sexy one, nobody can really get close to her, right? She's something intoxicating. She's something like, yeah, and that's always a power play. And what the seductress very much has is that she's actually never surrendering, because she's always the one that's one step ahead. She's always the one that's calling the shot. She's the person that is intoxicating the other. So there's actually a massive fear of rejection underneath it, because she thinks people are only attracted to her because she is manipulative or intoxicating or whatever the word is. In my current relationship, on our first date, I practiced with not being the sexy one and just be normal. Like, do I have value as a woman in front of a man when I'm not the most sexual thing in the room? Do I have value when I don't want sex? Do I have value when I can't get an orgasm, right? Like, do I have value then? Am I still a woman in front of a man? Am I still the feminine in front of the masculine? Or am I maybe not as interesting? Am I maybe not as fun to play with? And to feel that, especially with my current partner, he didn't care, right? He wanted to relate with me, not with the plaything. And so I've really actually learned through this relationship to release that I need to be in a sexual expansive state constantly to be attractive, fun, worthy, fun to be in relationship with, all of this, and to actually feel that my very normal self, right, my very normal sitting on the couch, hasn't brushed her hair self, is just as worthy to be related to as the other version. And so I think I can see it in a lot of women also that I coach, that this whole relationship to sexuality and to sexual energy is a very complicated one, because we get so many like completely opposing messaging on what that needs to be. Yeah,
Definitely. So where does that innocent sexuality play into all of that?
all sexuality is innocent. I teach this to everybody. Your desires are completely innocent. It's like your body saying, oh, I need salt. You know, if you have a desire to be dominated or to dominate, there's nothing wrong with you. If you have a desire to walk around like a kitty cat with a collar on, like, there's nothing wrong with you. That is innocent. So your desires are innocent. That's really the first step. Everything about you, everything in that first, oh, I want that person, innocent. You have no control over that. It's literally your system saying, I need some of that. I don't question it. Like, let's say I have a desire to be dominated a bit more. I literally discuss that with my partner. I say, I have that. And he's like, yeah, maybe we can create that for you. And it's literally like creating that kind of food for me. It's literally me saying, oh, I haven't had enough salt for the last few days. Okay, let's go and get you a salty meal. It's not this like constant over analyzing, like, are you repeating a trauma? Or no, it's like, okay, can we create some of that medicine for you? And that's really what the next step is. Your desires and everything about it is innocent. And then can you create something that could give you a little bit of the medicine that you're longing for in a situation where it's two consenting adults being transparent about what they're doing, or two consenting, or a group of consenting adults that are transparent about what they're doing, then you are free to create it. And that's really this thing with sexuality. We have such a taboo and suppression going on when actually there's so much you can't create. There's so much you can create, and there's also beautiful people out there that want to create that with you. And so to really allow yourself the innocence of desiring, the innocence of sexuality, the innocence of erotic. Like I know when I was, this is a very strange story, but when I was in the corporate world, whenever I got a promotion or a salary raise, I would get really turned on. And I thought, oh my God, this is so wrong. This is so wrong. Why am I getting turned on by this? And now I can see it was just, it doesn't even matter what it was, right? It gets to be there. Okay, fuck, there's lots of life energy there. Great. Beautiful. Yum. Okay, so this wakes you up. Beautiful. You know, it's a celebration of life almost, instead of making it wrong or right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I have on that.
I can totally relate to that too. Anytime I have like this, I think a great idea, or just, an idea or an inspiration comes to me, I literally get turned on and I'm like, oh, I like this. And like, this is like, that's my sign. This is the right thing to do. And it's like, yeah, because that's what you get to create. Like, this creation flows through you. You created that promotion. Why not get turned on by that? Like, that's just that creative energy saying like, good job. Like, fireworks going off within you in celebration.
Yeah, exactly. And the turn on is actually such a beautiful thing. And it doesn't have to be in only the category that we have been taught it's okay. I think especially a lot of female bodies, they will have responsive arousal instead of spontaneous arousal. So spontaneous arousal is that you just spontaneously get turned on and might think, okay, yeah. The responsive one is actually needs a little bit of time. It needs an external stimuli to be aroused. So you might need to read poetry to get aroused, or you might need your beloved to take the initiative on you and be like, oh, actually, yeah, right. So you're very much in response constantly. And so, especially in those cases, it's so important to allow yourself the responsive arousal when it's there. If that's a promotion, great. That's apparently one place where the fire gets started. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's what you said, we overanalyze so much. At any point during your life, did you actually overanalyze any of it? And another thing too, I think, just in our society in general, maybe trauma, what you mentioned, does come hugely into play into that overanalyzation. So did you experience any of that? And, how did you actually come into this place where you just let yourself stop analyzing?
Yeah, I really did a lot of research on things like rape fantasies. And rape fantasies, some people who have gone through sexual trauma have rape fantasies, absolutely. And a lot of other people also have rape fantasies that have not experienced sexual trauma. That somebody has a rape fantasy does not mean that they are trying to relive some trauma in a weird way, right? It's actually, if somebody has a rape fantasy, instead of over analyzing it, checking like, what can we do to create the kind of situation that you're longing for in a safe setting, in a transparent setting, in a like, what is it that you need to get from this? Because especially if you have gone through sexual abuse and you have a rape fantasy, that can be so deeply healing. Like, I love the conscious kink world for this, because it can create these deeply healing situations of going through maybe something that was really traumatic and now feeling that you are in control. You get to decide when it does or doesn't stop. You get to like, you are in control. It's because that's what makes it traumatic, is that you're not in control. To actually feel that you're in control, and that usually releases lots of erotic energy, right? It releases lots of erotic energy. Sounds like a very strange segue to this, but after my mother's funeral is when I had so much turn on in my system, because I think the moment we work with really darker aspects of our life, darker aspects of life, or go through these like more kinky things or more darker explorations, is when actually so much energy gets freed up. So much energy gets freed up. And it's really about creating the right container. So instead of over analyzing, like, should we do that rape fantasy? You may have experienced something. instead of over analyzing it, really like, how can we create it in a way that is truly safe? And I love like the more neo-tantric or things of like doing a check-in, of having the like the discussions on like, what is it that you're hoping to get out of this? What are your desires? What are you excited about? What are you fearful about? What are you worried about? What do you really not want to happen? Right. And really being transparent in what it is that you're creating together. I met my partner at a conscious shibari retreat, or a tantric shibari retreat, and it was all about creating the experience for the other. And so really standing in that, like, okay, I need this, I want to create this, here's what I'm looking for, here's what I'm excited about, here's what I don't want. And then to actually serve each other in that. And I think that's actually such a beautiful way that actually makes sexuality more of a play date, right? It becomes a play date rather than this like very heavy topic. And so I don't know if I really answered your question.
Well, I loved all of it. And I love that kind of that bhakti, that sacred devotion, compassion for the other person that we can add into yoga as
Yeah.
well. And even, I
Yes.
think that's even where a lot of everybody, who, no matter who's experienced sexual trauma, having that sacred container with a partner can be so transformative, even if it's not fulfilling a rape fantasy. If you've been raped, maybe you want the opposite end of the spectrum and you just want to be held, like, being penetrated and just being held in that moment. And just like allowing yourself to not overanalyze, like, I experienced this trauma, I don't know what to do, I feel like something's wrong with me, I feel broken, now I have to have sex, and I'm just going to push myself to have sex because maybe that'll work. And actually just letting yourself step back and say, I'm going to have a partner of my choosing. And like you said, just having that control and being respected and being seen and just embraced in whichever ways you want can be so
Yeah.
healing.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can sometimes say to my partner, like, I need to just resist you for a second. He's like, okay, cool, I'll do that. And there's no part of me that thinks, am I doing that because of what happened to me, or is there something repressed? That it's not about that. Like sometimes when you do breath work, you start crying all of a sudden, right? And there's not even a story. Sometimes it's just your nervous system that's saying, oh, I need a little bit of this medicine. Can you give me some of that? And like that's enough. And so I also don't want to discount the story if it's there, right? If the story is there, then own it. This is also sometimes part of the spiritual community, I think, where we completely discount any part of the story and never honor what has happened. If that's alive in you, then of course honor it. But you don't always have to go looking for it. I can sometimes cry and have no idea why. It's just there. And it's the same with this. Like I might want to be restrained and I have no idea why. It's just a desire. And that's something somebody can just create for you if they are up to it. They don't have to, if they're up to it. Yeah.
Definitely. I was actually just going to ask you that line between where, you know, it's easy to come from this tantric place because it is this self-acceptance of whatever is happening, whatever's coming up. But where is that line, do you think, between, this is supposed to be about your life story, by the way, and we're just going way off. We're going to bring it back eventually. But where do you think this line is between just not over analyzing, just letting it be whatever it is, and actually, like you say, like you don't go looking for the story, you see if it comes up? So is that the line between actually saying this self-inquiry or self-reflection of, okay, what is this coming up? Or,
So
where's the line between that?
I love, like, for instance, free writing. So I might like, or felt sense meditation. So felt sense meditations are, for instance, like, oh, I feel sadness come up. Oh, that sadness is waves of waters in my chest, or warm waters, it's in the darkness, like really feeling the physical sensation. This is a Peter Levine thing, but very much the description of the physical sensation. I'm a big fan of hypnosis and subconscious work, because there's so much richness there. And like, for instance, maybe it's a water thing and maybe you're actually drowning in it, right? That's already your nervous system telling you, oh, so this is how I'm relating to this emotion. And to actually let that narrative pull through. So I love sometimes, I'm doing breath work and tears are coming up, to just have the free writing or the felt sense meditation of, Okay, tears, oof, old, loving, I feel really young, just letting the associations come up and come through. And, yes, there is a fine line, and I work with really the three-part brain model. So that's very much acknowledging each part of the brain. And one is the prefrontal cortex, and that is the story. And so we can't pretend like the story isn't there at all. We also can't put all the emphasis on there. Like I think going through psychotherapy is a great, often beginning place, because it helps you analyze and structure everything that is your story. You can't skip that phase. You just can. And like we often think like, oh, psychotherapy, it's not that great, but actually it's a very important piece of the puzzle. And for instance, I have a terrible fear of flying. I went through years of psychotherapy on my fear of flying. I understand everything about an airplane now, but when I get into an airplane, my body freaks out, right? Because it's only one part of my brain. There are other parts of my brain that are still firing up like crazy. And for that, I need things like breath work. I need things like, yeah, like movement or sounding or self-pleasure that is really targeted at releasing these kind of emotions from my body. So the way I also work in my courses and with my clients is very much incorporating all three parts. So I for instance hated when I go through a breathwork workshop and afterwards like, don't talk about the story, go home. And I'm always like, oh no, so much happened. Because it's actually, I think, very valuable to discuss what is alive. And some people use that to not feel. Some people use that to not feel, so they can just be like, yeah, and then this happened, this happened. Like when I work with men I'm generalizing here, but sometimes the men in our men's circles, they talk lots about all the details, and they think it's very important that everybody understands all the details of the situation. I'm like, okay, brother, but I didn't feel you, right? You told me about all the details. I understand the situation completely now. I didn't feel you anywhere. And they're like, oh, fuck, right? So I think it's really, this is for me the goal in polarity, the goal in my body, the goal in also this is, where's the opening, and the opening deeper, right? So if I do breath work and I don't share or are seen or witnessed in anywhere what everything was that came up, there's a closure in me. If you just let me talk in a therapy session for 2 hours, I won't open up. Right? I'm just in an analytical frame of mind. So really feeling the combination of those two, and that might be different for everybody, that allows for opening. Where's the opening? Yeah.
Yes. So powerful. That's like letting that be the, objective or the destination or whatever, but not even keeping it in mind during the process is just such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you touched on your male circles. How did you actually come to niche all the way down to male sexuality and helping them embrace the shadow, the light, the sacredness of it all?
As I went into the more tantric spiritual communities, I was very confused about how everybody spoke about men, because it was very judgmental. It was a lot of sentences like, oh, where are all the good men? It was very much this energetic of waiting for him to wake up and to fuck up at the same time. And I'd had some quite abusive, toxic relationships before that myself. And I know from healing that demonizing the other never works. So just say like, oh, he was a narcissist, or oh, he was so avoidant. It's too easy, right? Because none of us are just shitty people. Even a narcissist isn't a shitty person, right? They might do some shitty things, but it's too simple to say like, oh, all narcissists are just jerks that are like trying to fuck you over. No, right? There's probably a very hurt little boy in there somewhere that just has no idea how to create intimacy and keep his sovereignty, whatever that is, right? It's just too simplified to demonize the other side. And I really noticed that the way we were speaking about men was so detrimental. And I saw like all the really nice guys and the tantric loving dovey men that, that I don't know, that were so feminine and just devotional. And I thought, well, that's not turning me on either. We're missing something here. We're missing something here. And the goddess movement as well just felt so like, I thought, if I like, I was also exploring my own inner masculine energetic, right? And I thought, if I'm in my masculine energy and somebody's in their goddess energy, that wouldn't excite me to get closer to. If like, I'm a queen, treat like a queen, I wouldn't think like, oh great, let me go play with that. Like, I wouldn't think that, right? And so I think it was very much also an exploration of my own masculine energy. I thought, oh, if I'm in a penetrative energy, or if I'm in that rock or oak tree energy, what do I actually need? And are we actually having that conversation? And so, yeah, also like I love developing my feminine energy as a female body, but I actually also love my masculine energetic. I can't mature as long as I'm rejecting the masculine side of me or the masculine outside of me, and then say, oh, but I want a man, right? Like, none of that. You can't hate what you want to attract into your life. And I really saw so much of that happening outside of me. And I was also trained as a men's coach. And so I was working with all these men, and just my heart was blown open every time I was sitting in front of a male client. And just like their stories I only see men that really want to do better and don't know how, and that really have no role models, have very little connection to other men. It's a deeply lonely experience often. There's lots of shoulds, lots of, pressure on who they need to be. It's very confusing. We are very, very critical. To men, we are extremely critical. We want you to be more emotional, but if somebody breaks in the house and you get scared, then you're a wimp, right? Like, it's a very thin line where we want them to be. And so I really feel for men. And so I know I feel much more feminine when there's a certain masculine next to me. And then I just made the simple math of thinking, like, then the masculine must feel much more masculine with the feminine next to them. And from that, our course was created. So I run that together with one of my best friends, Amanda Bickham, and we run a course for men called The Initiation, and we lead men into masculinity as two women. And everybody thinks there's no way, and actually it works insane, because they actually feel how masculine they are. We had one man who thought he had no masculinity left. He wasn't a masculine man. He wasn't even sure if he was a man. He's very much doubting his gender identity. He rediscovered how masculine he actually was. Right? Because I think when you are actually in a polarity like interaction, and you actually feel the feminine in front of you, it's just like, it's like simple science almost. It's like somebody gets automatically magnetized into their own masculine core. And so it's a really beautiful program. And I really believe in this integration also in the work that I do with women. I don't work on them like on just their feminine energetic. I don't work on just pleasure and dance and play. And, I think all of, and intuition, all of those things are beautiful and I love them, but you do have an inner masculine energetic. There's a part of you that gets shit done. There's a part of you that sets boundaries. There's a part of you that, when my partner is in a feminine energetic, my masculine needs to be there. So if I am shitty to him in that moment, I'm like, oh yeah, well, just do this and let's get it over with. That I can't do that while expecting the conscious king to walk into my life. There was such a discrepancy in the world, I think, in what we were expecting and how we are playing with those energetics within ourselves. And yeah, the work with men is honestly the most rewarding thing I've ever done. It's so beautiful. And I think when the masculine commits to something, when he chooses that penetration, when he chooses that, like, I'm standing for this, I'm going to do this, like entire community shift. And so I'm honored every time a man walks into our container. I'm so honored because I know what's going to happen. Yeah.
That's amazing. So do you feel more rewarded and in service working with men than you do in your women's circle, or is it equal because you get to have this interplay? Or
It's a different thing we're showing up for. I think with my feminine containers, it's much more about coming out of the pain body and the victim body and the resentment and back into opening. So yes, you can be so hurt about what all the men did to you. That pain gets to be here. And that can be an opener to the next man, right? It doesn't have to close you off. And so the practice is a different one. And that's a tricky line I walk on sometimes, right? Because there is some genuine, very shitty things have happened. Patriarchy has not been good on anybody. There's been a lot of men abusing their power. So this can be tricky. And yeah, to find the opening in the pain. And for I think what my work more is with the men is I feel like I'm helping them remember something. I just feel like I'm walking them home again. I'm just helping them remember, oh, right. This is how it feels like when I'm the rock. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is I was born to do this, right? I remember now. And so it feels I think I'm more directional with the feminine. With the masculine, I'm creating space almost around him so that he can find his way home.
I
If that
love
makes
it.
sense.
Absolutely. I feel I'm looking at you. I'm just like, she's such an embodiment of like feminine, but like just this true masculine healing that this world really needs because we're constantly pushing. And I specialize in working with women, especially, but even in this space, I'm always like, we're not trying to push for women empowerment. We're not trying to push for equality. We're just trying to push for everybody to just be themselves and
Yes.
and really just like coming home to that authenticity and the truth of who they are, like the capital T truth of who they are. That's all that it is. That's all that this whole entire journey is. And yes, as we were once a matriarchy and then we had the patriarchy and we are coming back into this balance or into this balance for the first time on earth. And so it's really just there's such huge power plays and power struggles happening and even
Yeah.
people trying to help people. Like yes, it's coming from a place of like you're trying to be in service, but why can't we just like neutralize everything? Like that's what's really the main goal is just this neutralization and just like this allowance and just this being and just this
Yeah.
truth and everything else. Neutral might be the wrong word, but
Yeah, I love feeling this fluidity. I'm very much a fan myself of frameworks, obviously masculine, feminine, but also anxious and avoidant and all these kind of frameworks because it helps, especially when everything is chaotic. It brings some order that you think, oh, right, I can feel it when I'm in my masculine. I can feel it when I'm in my feminine. And I actually notice the deeper and deeper I go into this work, the more it starts to actually come together again. And I love that about frameworks. And so I feel the fluidity in my masculine and feminine now, but I'm only able to do that because I've explored both extremes. And I feel it constantly switching in my relationships or between me and life or between me and money. I constantly feel the switch in where the energy is flowing to and from. And so it feels so much more fluid now. And really in how I work with these things, like I'm not giving another dogma. I'm not going to give you another set of rules of like, this is what it means to be a man, or this is what masculine is. No, I am in the true belief that when you come back to your essence, you're just going to know because it feels spacious. And so if I tell you that the feminine is playful, but that's not true to you, then disregard what I'm saying. Right. I don't want in any of my work, and you never ever have to agree with me because I don't care about you agreeing with me. I actually care about you finding our truth. So if that comes from thinking what Sophie just said is bullshit, great, because you felt your own truth there, and you know it's the truth when you feel expanded. And that's really, I think, in the world that we live in right now, where there's so many versions of truth and reality, and polarization on many fronts, is to start acknowledging that we all have our own reality and our own truth. And if it's one that makes you feel expansive, I applaud you. That's where it's at. And to also not need to, not everybody's going to agree with you. Everybody gets their own journey back to their version of expansive truth. And yeah, and in that, I'm honestly, I notice I'm very relaxed on social media. People disagree with me. Yeah, cool. I don't need to convince you of anything, right? That's your path. Great. Keep doing it. You want to have a path where masculine and feminine doesn't exist? Great. It makes me feel really good when I work with these energetics. So I'm following that. That's again me following my fuck yes. If your fuck yes is somewhere else, I only applaud that. I only applaud that because I don't want to be in another set of dogmas. It's not what we need to do in the world right now. Yeah.
I totally agree. That's actually it. Oh wow. Oh, we could just keep going on and on and on. I'm trying to like look through my questions and see, okay, like we're running out of time. Let's like hone in.
The time's going very fast. That's
It
really
is.
cute.
It really is. Um, okay. I have a couple like solid golden ones that I really want to ask you. So what's been the most helpful advice or activity for your own personal path to keep you, you know, in your truth?
What's been my own personal what?
Um,
Practice?
yeah, like the most helpful practice, activity, advice. Like, what's your reminder? Like, if you feel yourself, um, if you just need something to bring you back to your truth, or not that like you wander off, because this whole entire life is all about exploration, expansion, everything. But what's like that one piece of advice for yourself that maybe would ring true for somebody else that could help them be like, oh, maybe that's it.
There's two parts. One is whatever we judge can't shift. So if I judge anything, it can't change. So if I judge my weight, it won't change. If you judge a child, it won't change, right? It will just get louder and louder and louder. And so as long as I'm judging anything about me, it can't change. We think judgment will create change, but it does the opposite. It actually sets it. And so that's, I think, something I very deeply live by. And the other part is I like to see spirit, universe, the cosmos, whatever you want to call it, as a delicious divine masculine that is just there saying, okay, baby, tell me what you want. I create it for you. Right? Tell me how you like it. And so my role in that is to become crystal clear about what I like, what I want, what I need, and why. And to feel that I'm constantly creating with the universe, and that also isn't always pretty. It's not about me creating the most amount of money and the lovers, and I don't know, it's not just about that. It's really to deeply feel that even in your darkest hours there is this delicious divine masculine that is just sitting there and going, baby, I know you got it. I see you. I see what you're doing. You've got it. Right. So just I feel that energetic there all the time. I speak to it and I play with it. Right. When I'm launching and making money, I literally play with it. I'm like, okay, 10K more. Right. I'm literally being that energetic because I think that's literally what life is. It's life experiencing itself, right? The tree, the wind plays with the leaves on the tree and makes music, and sometimes it's so strong that the leaves fall off, right? It's constantly doing that, and it's also doing that with you. So it's more like, are you willing to play with it? Are you willing to show up for how it's playing with you? Are you willing, or are you in resistance? Are you constantly in resistance? Are you constantly ignoring what's happening? And so I really try to show up for what is here and see it as some divine. I like thinking of it like as a Jason Momoa.
That's
It's
perfect.
like it's like delicious divine masculine just going, okay, baby, what do you want? And that makes life easier, flowy, fun, brings a very different energetic. Yeah.
I love both of those things. Both of those things are perfect. I know people listening, they're going to go through something and they're going to be like, oh, I remember what Sophie said. Jason Momoa is talking to me right now.
I love this. Yeah.
Oh, man. So, what goals or dreams have actually come to fruition and manifested themselves for you because of this interplay that you have with the universe and in your life?
I mean, a year ago, I was still a data scientist stuck in a job. I was doing this work secretly, but or secretly, just not publicly. but I seem to be stuck in a very different life. And my business has been miraculous from day one. I had many really toxic, abusive relationships. I have a deeply healthy one now. It's so many things. I've always felt really lonely and like I don't have a tribe and nobody can meet me or nobody can get me. I wrote down in my diary the other day, I was like, oh fuck, I have it now. Like we often don't realize the good stuff is in our life. We actually don't realize when it's there. Like I know as I was healing from illness that all of a sudden I thought, I actually haven't been in pain for a very long time. Like you don't realize often when the good stuff is there. And yeah, I feel very much in the driver's seat of my life. And it doesn't mean things can't happen, or it doesn't mean that I'm always stable at all, but I feel like I'm in the driver's seat of something here. And when the bad stuff happens also then and it's not to punish myself, but it's more to feel like this is still part of me experiencing myself. It's still the universe experiencing itself, even in this. So let's go experience it then. Let's show up for what's here. Apparently there's medicine here. Yeah.
Oh, so beautiful. So where can people find you and your work and keep hearing all of these beautiful things that you keep saying and all these truths that you're sharing?
So the best place to find me is on Instagram, Sophie Josephina, and both are with an S and PH. And I have a great podcast as well called Deeper with Sophie Josephina, where I only interview men. And my website, Sophie Josephina, for my mailing list, because you never know what social media does. So those are, I think, the 3 best places to find me.
Awesome. I highly recommend following you. You're such a good influence, just for anybody in their life, not even if they're trying to explore Tantra, just for life in general.
Oh, thank you, baby. I really appreciate that.
So I just have one last question. This is my favorite question to ask because I think it's a great one to be asked, but also for everyone listening to ask themselves too. So the question is, who is the superhero inside of you that has all the power you could ever need?
Who is the superhero? Who is the superhero inside of me? Like the name of a superhero, or what do you mean?
Anything. So many people have interpreted this in different ways. So whatever it means to you.
Who is the superhero inside of me? That's a really hard question. I just see myself dancing with Jason Momoa. I think my partner is going to be like, what? Yeah, I think that's a superhero. Yeah. Who is a superhero inside of me? Yeah, I just see a woman dancing and in labor and everything and gentle, and I just see chaos.
I love it. I love it so much. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, talking about your work. And I just have so much gratitude and respect for you.
Oh, you too, Sarah. Thank you so much for getting such a wonderful, safe, gentle space to be. I really appreciate that.
I want to thank you for listening to this podcast. I hope that this episode has some way inspired you to take control, given you the tools to feel secure and on fire in your own independence, and help to unlock within you the impact that you're here to make. You're not born with a purpose. You're born as your purpose. It's already inside of you, and it's your responsibility in this life to live that in the truest way possible. If you've gotten any sort of value out of this episode, please share it so that we can together expand our inspiration and our impact in this world.